The next thing we're going to do, we're going to start, remember I was talking about training sit. It could mean you sit in front of me, but we can also be more specific. I want dogs, Captain, down, quiet. I want sit to also be cool, sitting on my left, sitting on my right. Especially if you guys are thinking about doing any heel work or loose leash walking, getting our dogs to sit on our right or our left is really important. We are a competition obedience club. So our training, most of the things, if you ever come to a live class, is going to be on the left. Your dog is going to be handled on the left. You're signaling with your left. Your dog is sitting on the left. But I wrote a book about living in the city with dogs. It is just as important for your dog to be able to do those things on the right-hand side too. If you're walking down a sidewalk, you're not necessarily walking against traffic. You might just be conveniently walking by some shops on the right or the left side, or walking through a neighborhood on the right or the left side, and there are sidewalks. If you're out in the country, that left is actually super important because traffic is coming towards you, and then your dog. But in the city, it's less important. It's more important for them to be flexible. So if I'm walking and my dog is on the left and there's a bicycle coming here, I want to be able to say touch and move my dog to my right. So now I'm between my dog and a bicycle, to take away that pressure and to give my dog a chance to like keep his cool and not lose his mind at that bicycle. So if I can get him to do sits and downs here, sits and downs here. But when I tell your dogs to sit, and I love doing this in a puppy class, and unfortunately, I don't have your puppies in front of me, like personally, but if you were just to like stand up right now and say, dog, sit, wherever they are, I guarantee most of them would run up to your front and then sit. And the reason that is, it's called the primary reinforcement zone. And without getting too nerdy, I'll send a bigger video on this that I've already recorded. But in short, teaching our dogs touch, sit, down, even leave it. They're here right at our front. So when we say sit, they think sit, sir. They think sit means to run over, and sit is here. But sometimes I want sit to mean sit over there, or sit up here, or sit here, or sit here, right? Or sit in the back seat of the car. So we're going to start to kind of proof this idea. You might see that sign that I have up on my wall, and I'll send it to you guys in a couple minutes, but it has the 4 Ds: distance, duration, distraction, and difficulty. And one big distraction for the dogs is not to have us sitting in front of them, is to have them sitting and there's no one in front of them to be able to do the behavior. We're not blocking their vision. Like, drama queen. I don't know if you guys can hear him, but he's like, he's got the worst life, I tell you. All right, so let's see if we can get our dogs to sit on our right or our left. Depending how comfortable you guys are with touch, you can just use touch to move your dog, or if you need to use a lure for a couple of them at first to get your dog to move, that's fine too. One last thing to keep in mind before we start. When we tell our dog to sit and you're right-handed, he's like, oh, I'm sitting. You stay. When we say sit and they're in front of us, this is what they see if if you are right-handed. If you go like this and you start signaling with your left hand, this is like a different dialect down. This is a different dialect for them. So in the same way, this is basically like American English and British English. It looks effectively the same, and it is the same from us, but from your dog's vantage point, they're underneath, and these look totally different, especially if you're right-handed and you're more comfortable doing this, and then with your left hand, you might be more like clunky. It might not have, you might get more shoulder involved. Oh my God. See, it's not just you guys. Mike, for your benefit, he was asleep a half an hour ago, and I'm just like, look at my calm, cool dog. So just putting that out there. But it might be more clunky. You might move a little differently with your left versus your right. So do file that away. When you're asking your dog to do something new from the other side or with a different hand or in a different position, It's not that your dog doesn't know it. They just don't know it in that context. And just keep that in the back of your head while we do this. All right, Captain, touch. So I'm just going to touch and see if I can get him to sit. Yes. Uh-oh, he stood up, so I'm gonna wait for him to offer a sit. Yes. And I only really wanna treat him when he's in position if I can. If your puppy is jumping up a lot to get the treat, wait it out. Wait until they offer the sit, and if I start to bring down the treat and he gets up, I'm gonna take it away. Good boy. And that also keeps him from being sharky. So with the puppies, it just might take a little while. So again, I'm gonna step back with my right foot just because he's long. For Kuno, that might not be a big deal. You might actually just be able to do this from here. You might not even have to move very far at all. You might have to be down here. Sit, yes. Now I'm gonna use touch. He's in front, I'm gonna use touch. Sit, on my left, yes. Touch, sit, yes. Touch, sit, yes. Good job. So I'm going to pause and see where everybody's at. Leave it, buddy. Captain, leave it. Oh, buddy, Cap, off the computer. Not your best side. All right, so what we're gonna do here, there we go. So if I'm working with a dog, every dog has a place where there's a lot of pressure that they either back away from or lean into. Some dogs like Captain have very few boundaries for personal space. But other dogs, often small dogs, but not always. I work with a lot of big dogs who are very nervous about people leaning over them. And so what I'm going to demonstrate is that I can lean over Captain, and you can see how he starts to lick his lips here a little bit. He's a little bit nervous with me just putting all of my body in front of him. Another example for Captain, he hates when people reaches over his head. So if I reach over his head, you see how he's kind of like, I don't like that. If I, you see, I don't like that. So he kind of blinks a little and he licks his lips. He's tolerant of it because I give him food down, and he's pretty social, and he's figured out, well, people have bad habits, but it's worth it to me to just stupid humans being stupid humans. But not every dog is going to be that tolerant. I work with a lot of dogs where if I just reach over it like that, where I reach over their head and they'll back up like I'm really scared, or they might even hit the deck. And some dogs won't even come within like a few feet if I'm trying to reach over or if I'm trying to get them to do something. So for those dogs who are a little bit more sensitive to body pressure, especially shoulders leaning, those dogs, I would probably just say, see if you can work them a little bit more on your side, because if I'm working a dog here, Captain, touch. I have no chest over this dog. I can lean as much as I want. And it's not really going to put pressure on the dog. Sit. So I can lean here, and he's kind of leaning into it. He's like, just give me my cookie, man. But if he were in front of me and I leaned over and this was a shy dog, I would expect them to scoot way out or not even offer the behavior if I have to lean over to get them to do it. So if you have a dog that's a little bit more nervous, Cap, stay. If you have a dog who's a little bit more nervous or sensitive to body pressure, file that away. There's always something else that we can do. Leave the cat food alone, buddy. I can't wait for COVID to be over, to be like working out of my house. I'm gonna go back to recordings. That way we can share it with Alto's parents too when this is over. All right. So socialization in the time of COVID. Good luck to all of us. So socialization is really a period of time between birth and, depending on your breed or your particular dog, between birth and 16 weeks and some dogs as late as 20 weeks of age. that socialization window, we all kind of have an idea as to what socialization might be. I find most of my students assume that it's get your dog around as many people and as sounds and sights and all of these other things. But there are some caveats to consider as well. So when we're talking about socialization, it's not just all these things that we see and experience. I walk my kid up to her school, and there are parents that have new puppies, and they always bring those, or back when we could, they would take their new puppies up to the school so that they could be socialized to children. That's a technique that we would call flooding. And that's basically, all right, you're going to learn to swim. I'm just going to throw you off the deep end. And that's not ideal for like actually socialization, for socializing a puppy. And once your dog is over the age of 20 weeks or so, whenever that socialization window closes, you can still have social experiences, but the brain isn't as open to new things as it would be if it was like a 12-week-old puppy or an 8-week-old puppy. So the more handling, more body handling, the more exposure to new sounds and new smells, because this is how a dog perceives the world, not necessarily with their eyes. It's not, is that guy wearing a baseball hat, but what deodorant is he wearing? That is almost more important to me as a dog trainer to really impart onto you guys as to what socialization really is and how to do so responsibly, and that you can still do these things through COVID. So even if you guys are in social isolation or quarantine or are not going out as often, there are still ways that you can effectively socialize your puppy and still prepare your puppy for adulthood without having to flood them, without having to take them to your friends or to restaurants or walking down busy streets. The two biggest or three biggest ones that I would say are included in this are body handling. So your veterinarian and your groomer will love you for this if you put the time in now. And some puppies tend to be a lot more sensitive, especially with their feet. I'm going to send a video on like how to do nail trims and an upside down settle. I usually don't. I kicked my dog out, so I can't use him, but I usually don't have the dog sit in front of me and then grab their paw and go this way, because remember I was just talking about body pressure. In order to do that, I'm leaning into the dog, and a lot of dogs are very uncomfortable with that, and I'm face on face with my dog. So if I cut the quick, the quick is a nerve and vein tendon that run through, vein and nerve in tandem, not tendon, in tandem that run through the fingernail. It's basically if we cut down too short on our own fingernail and it bleeds and it's really painful. They grow in tandem, and if you cut too short, that bleeds. It bleeds a lot. And it's painful. So with us, if we get our nails, it hurts, like especially if we're like typing or if we're doing something. But with your dog, they're walking on concrete. And if it's in the wintertime, the concrete is cold and that hurts that nerve that's exposed. If there's chemicals on the sidewalk because of salts or snow or ice or whatever, that's literal salt to the wound. If it's hot, that nerve is even more exposed. So like they're constantly, their nails are always in contact with the ground and are weight bearing, unlike our hands if we were to cut our quick a little bit. So do keep that in the back of your mind. So instead of grabbing them this way, I like to teach an upside down settle where the puppy basically does half a roll over between your legs, and then their feet are straight up and you can just go click, 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 click. And it makes it so much easier if you can do that. Some puppies don't like to be on their back ever, and I'm not going to force a dog to stay on their back at any time. I would start to maybe train a rollover, and if the puppy's cool with it, then I would just keep them in that position and see if I can touch their feet. I might also like play with their ears a bit, just kind of tug on them, not like, but like kind of touch their ears. If they're dangly ears, I might look in, especially if you have a floppy eared dog, like a lab or a spaniel, doodles. They can get a lot of ear infections throughout their life. So you want to make sure that like they're comfortable with you touching their ears now. So that way, if you ever do have to clean out their ears or give them medication for either a yeast or a bacterial infection, that your dog is like, oh, this isn't weird at all. This is just that thing we do. It's fine. So ears.